All right, grace and peace be multiplied unto each and every one of you guys. I am Christ, I am disciple, and the stream has just begun. Um, I was due to post up something to you guys much earlier. What happened was the rain, and I had to work. So this is the opportunity I have now to do what needs to be done. Um, you know, so here we are. So this is my opportunity here, and I just wanted to take the time to give all praise to the Most High God. The Most High God comes first in my life, in all our lives. That's what I believe. So I want to just give him honor and glory as we go into this stream. I want to start off this stream a little different. I want to show you guys something that is very, very powerful and something that we really should bear in mind at all times. First of all, let me start off by saying I'm going to talk about some spiritual things, and you guys shouldn't be put off by this. I will use my knowledge of Western science to describe what I'm talking about, okay? So we start off by talking about spiritual things such as faith and hope, okay? These are two beautiful themes and spiritual qualities that Zack Snyder pretty much gave a different, shall I say, not just Zack Snyder, but Zack Snyder in combination with Chris Terrio, David Goyer, Christopher Nolan. He really developed on these themes as we went through the trilogy of Superman movies. And I really love it because it is so applicable to the real world. I'm going to expound a little bit on faith. I'm going to expound a little bit on hope. But first, in Man of Steel, as you see in front of you here, let's just hone in on this particular part here. In Man of Steel, the priest who used to be Superman's bully when he was younger, Clark Kent's bully, who turned priest, showed his maturity by saying sometimes you have to take a leap of faith first, and the trust comes later. What this means is, and that's a really interesting way of saying things, because it really kind of separates what faith is from what trust is. Trust is you trust someone, or you trust the process, means you're willing to believe that whatever this process is and whatever this person is saying is true. That's what trust is. Trust and truth, they begin the same way, right? TRU. So you're basically believing what somebody's telling you, or believing that person, or believing that process, right? But faith is a bit of a something else. Let me explain. Faith is not just trusting something or believing something. Faith is acting on that trust and belief. Faith doesn't necessarily have to be logical. So it's not just about trust. Trust is where you're relying on something, right? You're leaning onto something. Faith is where you're taking something that has not been affirmed yet, something that no one trusts in, and you're taking that and acting on it. Let me give you an example. So there was that belief that mankind couldn't run sub 10. They couldn't run under 10 seconds. It was biometrically impossible. not only did I believe it was Joe Louis, break that, or was it something Johnson? It was something Johnson, I think. Not Jack Johnson. I forgot what his name is. That's crazy. Was it something Owens? Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens, right? Not only did Jesse Owens break that, but he changed the paradigms under which people thought about mankind running. Now, he had a strong belief in the fact that he could do it. But the thing that made it really incredible was the fact that no one believed that at the time. No one believed that men would be able to fly in the sky. It wasn't conceivable. People weren't thinking that. But someone had the faith enough to believe that and acted on it, which is part of it. Faith is not just believing, but acting on it. So when the priest says sometimes you take a leap of faith, what he means by that is, even though you cannot see in a tangible way, a way how something can work out, sometimes you have to act on that which no one has seen before. So he was asking Clark, or Kal-El, he was asking him to do something that was seemingly crazy, what we would call today seemingly crazy. And that was to believe in what he was about to do, which is he was about to try to save mankind through going to see General Zod. Even though he doesn't trust General Zod and he doesn't trust mankind. But what he really wants to do is he wants to do the right thing. And in this case, his leap of faith says, the right thing for me to do is to surrender to General Zod to protect humanity, because General Zod threatened humanity and their destruction if Superman wasn't brought to him. So it's a leap of faith in the sense that, okay, I grew up with mankind, I know them, but they are also very treacherous. He knows that they're also not people I can trust. But the action I need to take it in which I need to go against the judgment of an average person, which was self-preservation, being with my own people, my own kind. I'm going to take a different step. I'm going to try and protect these people. So this was the leap of faith on his behalf, because he doesn't fully trust humanity. He doesn't trust General Zod. But because he's been with humanity, this is what he knows, he's going to take this leap of faith and he's going to try to protect humanity, in spite of the fact that he does not trust humanity. So that's why it's called a leap of faith. And that's the difference between trust and faith. Faith is something, in the scriptures it says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. There's no evidence to help you put your trust in something. It's something that you hope towards. And we introduced the word hope right there, right? And in Man of Steel, hope is also explained. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, this is tied back together when Batman takes on the hope that Superman had. So Batman, in Man of Steel, we saw Jor-El describe hope to Superman. Hope is the potential in every person to be a force for good. This is what he said it was. Hope is basically, it's sort of like the precedent to faith. That is to say, hope is faith without works. Or shall I say, that's the wrong way to say. Hope in action is faith. Hope in action is faith. So let's say you hope for a certain outcome. Well, if you behave and act towards that outcome, you're showing that you have faith in what you want to see. Faith is a doing word. Faith is not something you just believe. So I can say I believe you and what you're telling me, but I'm not going to do it. Right? That's belief. I can say I trust you. Uh, you know, I trust what you're about to what you've told me and so on. I trust you. And then you may act on it. The acting on it is your faith in what the person has said. You trust that person. So to trust someone means to believe them and to believe what they're saying, right? But faith is more of an action. Faith is the act that you do after. Another way of putting it is, and this is why trust. Okay, take for instance in the Bible, uh, Abram was supposed to offer up his son, his only son, as a burnt sacrifice. This is what the Most High asked him to do. Now that makes absolutely no goddamn sense because he said that this is the chosen son. He had two sons at the time. This is the chosen son that I want, and you're going to make a great nation out of him. Then he goes and tells him, now go and sacrifice that son. Makes absolutely no goddamn sense. But he obeys and he does it. And just before he was about to kill his son, a ram or a lamb or sheep came into the equation, and that was offered instead. Now, there was no reason for Abraham to trust God on that. He would be like, but you told me this guy is supposed to be a great nation. Why would I sacrifice him to you? That makes no sense, right? So trusting is you trust people because they're authority figures. You trust people because you've proven them and you know that what they say is usually true. So this is how you end up trusting someone. Faith has no evidence. The evidence is yet to be seen. It's a whole other level of belief in which you're acting on it. You're acting on something that there's no confirmation, there's no evidence that what you're doing is supposed to give the outcome you're hoping for. That's the difference between faith and trust. And the reason why logic and reasoning goes out the window once you start dealing with faith. Because what you're saying you're going to do and what you're acting on is illogical to most people and will be illogical to most of the world. They'll be like, you're delusional. They will tell you you're delusional when you act on faith because there's precedent for this. This does not work out, or this has never been done. What are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even follow science. So I say all of this to say that, they throw around words like hope a lot in comic book movies. I remember Jeff Johns talking about, Superman needs to be hopeful and bright. And I'm like, what? Do you even know what hope is? They throw around those words. And hope is tied directly to faith. So you can hope for something, and people can tell you that's unrealistic. You remember when Jarrell said to Clark, a.k.a. Jarrell said to Cal, he said, you can save them, Cal. You could save her. You could save all of them. That's very unrealistic, right? But Cal believed him. Cal believed him, and he had faith. He had faith. He believed what Jarrell was hoping for could be done. Now, ultimately, in the end, he didn't save everybody in Metropolis. People died. But he saved a significant portion of people by stopping the world engine and by getting rid of the threat that was imposed on Metropolis, and then by larger extension the world. It was going to expand. And I think somewhere people say that Superman's a beacon of hope, and you can literally see that iconography right here, where the lady's looking up in a flood. and she has hope that she will be saved and her family because Superman appears amidst a brightish, sunny, in spite of the cloudy sky. There's this brilliant, almost aura of hope from Superman in the sky, right? Now that's very important because if you do remember um, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, Batman appears in a different aura. He's got this aura now. Well, Zack Snyder kind of describes it visually as this aura of hope as he comes on top of Gotham's City Police rooftop, right? And Commissioner Gordon sees him amidst the lightning in the night sky because, of course, he's the Dark Knight, and Superman's, the son of Krypton, right? He's the sun, and he's dark, right? So there's stark contrast in that respect. But you see Batman as a hopeful Batman. And in Zack Snyder's Justice League is a hopeful Batman. The whole story is a hopeful Batman. It's about Batman's hopefulness, in spite of all the failures that seem to happen along the way. And what's interesting about that is it's almost a recreation of Man of Steel, because Man of Steel. Okay, so just to kind of elaborate a little further, Man of Steel is the birth of hope in superheroes, right? Superman comic number one, Action Comics number one, right? Superman, starts off this superhero genre, right? Before that, we have comic books. We always had comic books, right? We had comic books, but we never had superhero comic books. We never had anybody with superpowers. So Superman's like the beginning of that. And in the DCEU, Man of Steel is like the, beginning of, it's like a new beginning in terms of comic book heroes and comic books, right? So Superman starts that off. And this is very important to understand that this is also a new beginning. Turns Superman is dead, and now it's the birth of the Justice League. So Zack Snyder's Justice League and Man of Steel. Man of Steel is the birth of Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League is the birth of the Justice League, right? And but the difference is, because Superman died, somebody has to carry the hope forward. And the person who carries the hope forward this time is Batman, in his own Batman-y way, right? So, what's beautiful about, the parallels between hope and faith is we start off with a alien who's been, this is very important for us to understand because there's biblical ramifications to this. There's literally real world ramifications for what I'm about to say, right? And I want you guys to understand, because we're in a phase of a birth of something, and I'll talk more about that, and then why I'm going down this spiritual route with you guys, because everything is spiritual. There's actually a birth of something happening right now. So this is why, and it has been sparked for me in part by what Zack Snyder did with his movies, and why even release the Snyder Cut, now restore the Snyderverse movement is so powerful. And I want you guys to understand, Zack seeded certain things in our minds, and he was very subversive with it. And that also, his movies kind of added to the zeitgeist, okay, that's out there. And so, I always think, I mean, Zack depicts it a lot. I always thought that Zack was a spiritual person. And, he addressed certain spiritual things. And I think, if you're a religious-minded person, or someone who is zealous for, esoteric things, or for religion, not necessarily religion, but spiritual things, it's going to kind of magnetize towards you. And there's a reason for that, right? And I haven't gotten into the science yet of what I'm talking about, but I'm sorry to digress. Let's just go back into it. So what you were saying is that this is the birth of Superman. And in the birth of Superman, David Boyer took time to explain in quite great detail the importance of hope, right? And he was literally, if you look at the movie, it's depicting hope over and over and over again. We can deal with many different scenarios. We had where Superman inspired hope with, the collapsed oil refinery that was on fire. He brought hope to the survivors of that and were able to escape them to safety. That's hope right there. You see, besides Superman, you see Jor-El create hope for the planet, the dying planet of Krypton. That the birth of Superman, literally, the birth of Kal-El was literally the birth of hope for the Kryptonian people. Jor-El's solution to the problem, right? So literally that theme of the birth of hope is happening over and over and over and over and over in Man of Steel. You think of not just Superman being involved, but, Perry White with the little assistant there that was trapped under the rubble, and he wanted to know if she was injured in any way. She was panicking and stuff, and he held her hand. He gave her hope so she would stop panicking, right? And we saw it right down to the nail-biting finish, right, where Superman destroyed the world engine. So, that theme is just very rampant in Man of Steel. So when people say Man of Steel is not a very hopeful film, I'm like, what are you talking about? Why is it that you do not understand that hope doesn't have to be giggles and laughs and sunshine shining in the background? Hope is about a desired outcome, though it seems so infinitely difficult to happen. There's still that little beacon of light in there where you believe that this outcome's still possible. It's the possibility of an outcome that is good, right? It's all about a possibility of an outcome, even if it's very faint. Because hope doesn't deal with quantities. Hope doesn't deal with preconditions, or hope doesn't deal with your past. It's all about projected future, right? It's a desire to see a projected future. How unrealistic that may seem, that is what it is. So we saw the birth of hope in the DCEU. We were introduced to a character who was a hope for his people, a dying nation, hope for a dying nation. I want you to hear what I just said. It's very deep. Hope for a dying nation. A nation about to become extinct, but there's hope that it can continue on. Yeah? Now, let's go here. Birth of the Justice League. This is hope passed on from a dying person to another. Let me say that again. This was the birth of hope in Batman. Batman had lost hope in humanity, right? He found that hope in humanity in an alien. Let me say it again. Let me roll it back first. This that you're watching here is an alien. It's someone who is alien to our world. I want you to hear me. Scripturally, it is said, always welcome a stranger into your gates, for some have entertained angels unawares. By a family, a man and a woman who couldn't have children, welcoming in this stranger amongst them and raising him and caring for him, they entertained an angel unawares who would end up saving the world. Over and over, I heard Jonathan Kent say these words to Clark. And when I hear people go in on Jonathan Kent in Man of Steel, I am quite shocked that they did not see how hopeful this man was. But hope, for it to continue, sometimes there must be sacrifice. Sometimes you have to lay down your life so that others can have hope. That's the crux of, as a Christian, the gospel. Jesus laid down his life so that we could have hope of eternal life. And that's it's a 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 what's the word I'm looking for? Expansion on the understanding of hope. Hope is not about everything being merry and gay and happy and bright and sunny. No. It is about a desire to see a good outcome in spite of whatever is happening. And mind you, sometimes the person who hopes very strongly never gets to see that hope manifested. They die before that happens. But it's passed on to someone else who lives to see it manifest. In the great scripture of faith, Hebrews 13, it speaks about Abraham dying and being buried, but God had promised him a nation that would transform and save the world. And though he never physically lived to see that day, he saw that day through the eyes of faith. Faith is the vehicle that carries you from hope to the manifestation of a thing. And he saw that manifestation outside of time. Now, I'm speaking these things to you, and some of you will understand what I'm saying, and some of you will not understand what I'm saying. You'll say you're talking a bunch of shit. And I understand that. I understand. Trust me, I understand it. Because what I am saying to you is not something you can easily trust, because there is no evidence of what I am saying. Tangible evidence you can see that says that that is true. That when I tell you that Abraham saw that day and was glad, even though Jesus said he saw the day, Jesus told, the people there, and they were like, "You are a madman. What are you talking about? Abraham has been dead and buried for so many years." And Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am." And they picked up stones to throw at him, to kill him. These are religious people, because Jesus was talking stuff that they just did not understand because it was spiritual. What I am telling you is spiritual. When I tell you about faith, and when Zack Snyder tries to capture faith on a screen, which is crazy to try to do, because it's almost damn near impossible to do, he was able to pull it off because of the qualities of faith. Jonathan Kent laid down his life so his son could fulfill the hope that his real father, Jarrell, on a dying planet, freed him to live, to fulfill. Do you understand how crazy that sounds? That sounds like a madman talking to you, because you cannot fathom, there's no logical reasoning. What is the connection between Jarrell and Jonathan? How is it that Clark goes to Earth and he finds a particular family with a particular man who is able to fuel that hope within him, seeing that most people on planet Earth are narcissistic? What are the odds on that? It doesn't fill in to logic and reason. Faith does not follow logic and reason. Bruce says to Alfred, when Alfred says, "How are you going to get the team together? How are you going to get them to fight this and this box? All the king's horses and all the king's men." He said, "Alfred, for once, I am operating strictly on faith, not on reason." Faith goes outside of the boundaries of logic and reason. Logic and reason says you must have a foundation before you step off and go somewhere. A foundation that is tangible, a foundation that we can see. The way how our world is built, you have to have some kind of evidence before me, before I can commit to you and trust you with X or Y or Z dollars for investment into your company. Now, the mad way is to be in faith. I have faith in your company. I'm investing all this money into your company. You haven't done anything yet. You haven't said anything yet. This person just pulls up on you out of the clear blue sky and is willing to invest. You just talked to God and said, God, is this the way I need to go? You know, is this the way my company needs to go? And God says, yes. And you leave your home, you're going out there, and somebody just like a madman comes out of nowhere and is like, listen, man, I need to pour X amount of dollars into your company. And you never talked to this guy, you never met this guy. That's a life of faith. You obeyed and you walked even though there was no evidence. You have nothing to show for it. You are like a madman in this world. And that's what Bruce was doing. And the other thing that people do not understand is everything doesn't flow nice and smoothly. We saw Bruce try to recruit Arthur Curry, also known as the Aquaman. He was turned down. What did he say? And that's the thing about this Batman that I've never seen in any Batman. Even, Christopher Nolan's Batman, The Dark Knight, and even Batman Begins. Batman speaks about giving people hope and so on in that movie. And it's a fantastic, all three movies are fantastic movies. I don't particularly like Batman Begins, okay, but I can get a lot from it. The Dark Knight is really the one that got my attention in terms of entertainment. The Dark Knight Rises didn't really do much for me, but it was still quite an elaborate movie. But the lessons are always there. Batman was providing some kind of hope to the people of Gotham. Okay, but Batman generally by nature is cynical. He's skeptical of everything. He likes to work by himself. Okay? He used to work with a team, but he more prefers to work by himself. He's quite, he's not narcissistic, but he is, he's sort of solitary. But here now he's doing everything against what we know Batman to be. And what makes this Batman more hopeful than any other Batman I've ever seen on screen is not the fact that he's talking about giving people hope and stuff like that. That's cool. No, it's that he's operating on hope and operating on the next level, which is called faith. And faith, as I said before, is the conduit between hope and the reality of that hope, seeing it realized. So not only is he a hopeful Batman, like Superman was, but now he's also conduit of carrying that out. And so even when he did not succeed with Arthur Curry in getting him recruited, he said, and he went on this crazy journey too, a very, very difficult journey just to find this guy, only to get rejected. He says, I found him. So he starts off hopeful. And then he says no. And Alfred does not provide any kind of measure of encouragement. He's like, maybe you should just throw in the towel. And he just keeps walking up into the plane. It's like if Alfred said nothing. Maybe we should go to Jamaica. Maybe it was better for you to go to Jamaica. Alfred's trying to check him at every turn, man. And Bruce just doesn't take it. He just kind of shrugs it off and keeps on going. Because Bruce is compelled. There's going to be this threat that they have to face. And they're going to have to fight against it. And it's a dream. He just got a dream. That's it. He has no other confirmation. Like I said before, no actual evidence that there's a threat until Wonder Woman comes in and actually tells him the story and starts to break down. He's just working purely on because there's no logic behind it. There's no evidence. And he's acting on it, right? And it's beautiful to see this because that's what faith is. So for anyone who's a person of faith, whether you be a religious person, a spiritual person, or a person who is not spiritual, you're not religious, but you operate, you just certain things you just know and you just operate on it, then you know what faith is. You either have it or you don't. It's not something you can work your way into. It's not something you can kind of work yourself into. You either have it or you don't have it. But in this case, Bruce has it. The spirit of Superman goes onto Batman, which is Batman v Superman, for those of you who don't know. And this is what we get. Now, why did I spend all this time? I spent a lot of time on this. I spent almost more than half an hour on this, speaking to you. Why did I spend so much time on it? You guys can leave comments in the comment section. I can't see your comments, by the way. I won't be able to see your comments, but when I come out, maybe I'll look at the stream again and see what comments you're making. So if you want to leave some comments in the comment section on faith and on hope, and even expand on it a little bit more, what you saw in Batman v Superman. I don't have enough time to expand more on this. It's just a lot I want, but the purpose of it was to get to this point. Now, the birth of the Release the Snyder Cut movement was based on the hope that the Snyder Cut could be released. The hope. But what made that a reality was the conduit of faith. The people who pushed for this thing constantly had faith that it could happen. And because of that, they were called delusional. They were called all kinds of evil, nasty things. A lot of nasty things. But because the movement tapped into the faith, this movement had no leader. For a minute, we had what's her name? I forgot her name right now. She, was kind of, but there was no leader for this movement, right? But the faith is what got the outcome. And it took 4 years. It took from 2017 until 2021 for it to become a reality. The faith that Zack Snyder showed in his movies was the faith that this movement used to birth the Snyder Cut. And it also birthed the movement. Hope started the whole thing. The hope, I can't remember, I think it was a guy from Ireland. He started Release the Snyder Cut. The hope that this would happen. Now, in the beginning, I wasn't on board with that movement. I was defending WB left, right, and center. But what convinced me was when I saw the additional footage where Superman was walking inside of the Kryptonian ship looking at the different suits. It was beautiful, and I realized, oh shit, he didn't have, it's Henry Cavill. I knew Zack Snyder shot that, and I was like, oh my God, we've been lied to. And so I needed convincing, but not the other people in the movement. They didn't need any convincing. They were sure that wasn't Zack Snyder's work, and they wanted to see it. And that's the conduit of faith. They acted on it. They took a leap of faith against all odds. And everyone would say that's not logical what they're doing. They're delusional. And we hear that over and over and over again. And now in this movement, Restore the Snyderverse movement, the same thing is happening all over again. But again, it's the birth of the hope of seeing Zack Snyder finish off his trilogy of his movies and get the 5-part movie arc. And also to see Ben Affleck get his Batman movie, to see Superman in a Superman standalone movie, Henry Cavill as Superman, to see the Amazon story, that we were supposed to get, the Cyborg story, the Flashpoint paradox story that we were supposed to get, the Green Lantern story, the series of stories that were supposed to play out and end, And so this is the same thing playing itself out all over again. And for those of you who don't know, that's faith. You're acting on faith. You're not acting on anything else. There's no evidence. I mean, there's previous evidence of the Snyder Cut being released, right? You've been successful there, but we're moving on through faith. It's faith. There's no evidence to support that Snyderverse will be restored. There's no evidence of that, But we've gotten closer and closer, and we're not taking no for an answer, meaning even if we fail, we're not stopping. And that's the thing that's important, that you continue, because faith is an action. Hope is a belief. Faith is an action. And you continue to act out through this. You continue to demand for restore the Snyderverse. You continue to remind people. You continue to take efforts to constantly move in that direction. And because of that, because of your faith, you will see that outcome. It's very certain to happen. And that's because you believed. When we talk about free Palestine, those of us who are very passionate about this, we are not speaking without hope. And we're certainly not speaking without faith, because we're acting on what we hope to see. And that's the difference. We already can visualize a free Palestine. We know what it looks like. And because of that, and that's the source of all of the turmoil in the Middle East, which has been started by Israel, and even before that, the settlers who came in there from Europe, they started this. And now we know the true story. See, in the beginning, when I was doing Free Palestine, like many of us, we thought that what was happening in real time was bad. We didn't know about the history of it. We didn't understand the history of what was happening in the Middle East and why this was a threat to the Middle East. Now everything's unraveling before our eyes. Now we don't just listen to legacy media, we listen to many different media. And because the internet and social media is so ripe with so many different opportunities to find source material, we're getting to see the thing raw and uncut and realize, what's really going on, why Free Palestine is so important for the world, not just for the Palestinians, even though that's most important, that's first and foremost, but for the world, because we understand now what the new world order is, what these people really want to have, what kind of world they want regulated. We understand who's behind this now. There's so much we've learned on this journey of Free Palestine. And if you want to be on the right side of history, then you have to fight for humanity. And this is a do or die kind of thing. It's really that serious. So we're going to go into that in some detail, but I wanted to spend a lot of time on this before I get out of here and go and work. And so I'm going to pivot to this now. Again, let us not forget the spiritual values of hope and of faith. I'm going to be saying that over and over as we go through this. This stream, okay? Breaking news. The U.S. officially removes Colonel Nathan McCormack from his position at the Joint Chiefs of Staff for posts calling Israel a death cult and saying America is acting as Israel's proxy. So, for those of you who don't know, we've had people inside the government of the United States of America, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who are vehemently against what Israel is doing right now in the Middle East, point blank, period. And I just want to rehearse it back to you guys. The atrocities that Israel has done since 2023 in the Middle East. I may go back a little bit further. All right, so let's start. Number one, Israel was responsible for the U.S. going into Iraq and starting the Iraq War. As you know, Mr. Netanyahu came in to Congress and started laying out why removing Saddam Hussein from power would lead to a peaceful Middle East and a democratically elected Iraqi government would make it better for everyone. And so the U.S. went into the Iraq War. There's another reason, of course, George Bush Jr. avenging his father's losses and also Dick Cheney's losses with Halliburton and with the oil refineries in Kuwait. Not to mention that they also were able to tap into the oil resources of Iraq. So killing Saddam Hussein, which was an assassination of Saddam Hussein, it was supposedly a preemptive strike. It was actually an act of war where they just, like mobsters and gangsters, just entered Iraq and started bombing and invading Iraq. Okay. It was absolutely wrong. It was war crime in which most of the United Nations did not support. U.S. unilaterally, along with the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and a couple other countries, but mostly led by the U.S., invaded Iraq, bombed the shit out of them, killed millions of people, and we're talking about innocent civilians who thought that America was coming to liberate them from Saddam. And not only that, destabilized Iraq. A lot of the Kurds were murdered and butchered. A lot of the Sunni were persecuted by the Shiites because Iran started going into Iraq. And then on top of that, ISIS was born. Of course, ISIS being a Mossad CIA operational force of mercenaries. So ISIS was born. The U.S. was supposedly fighting against ISIS. Russia joined in. ISIS invaded Syria and destabilized there, while also aiding in the coup in Libya, where they assassinated Colonel Gaddafi. So you see a sequence of assassinations. Yet Saddam Hussein was assassinated. Then Colonel Gaddafi was assassinated. They went down into Sudan and started causing disruption and destabilization of Sudan. They then destabilized Somalia. And then they came back up, and most recently, they destabilized Syria. Of course, Israel had been bombing the crap out of Lebanon at will. Hezbollah is the only resistance. They've been firing their rockets into northern Israel, which is now uninhabitable. No one can go back into northern Israel. And mind you, now Tel Aviv is almost completely off the face of the map because Iran has been mercilessly bombing Tel Aviv. Nobody's covering that in the news, but Iran is turning Tel Aviv into Gaza, okay, as we speak, as well as Haifa. They're really bombing the shit out of Haifa right now. And they're also, by the way, bombing East Jerusalem. They also bombed places where Netanyahu lives. The Ben Gurion airport cannot be opened. It's been bombed several different times. Iran is basically raining down hell on Israel right now. And of course, Donald Trump is trying to get a back to negotiations, but that's not going to happen with Iran anytime soon. Iran is going to bomb the shit out of Israel. Now, we know that Israel is also doing selective bombing campaigns on Iran as well. And they had their operations with Mossad inside of Iran where they sabotaged various things. Donald Trump's talking about targeting the Ayatollah of Iran. So they keep on constantly trying to kill off head officials of Iran. I believe they also assassinated the last official of Iran. Was it the president of Iran? I think it was the president of Iran when he was flying in a helicopter. Israel never claimed responsibility, but I thought that Mossad probably did that with drones, took down the helicopter as they tried to. The same set of people tried to do the same thing to Vladimir Putin. They do a lot of terrorist activities, and they're trying to do that also in Iran. But Tehran is bombing the shit out of Tel Aviv, is bombing the shit out of, and the Houthis are also bombing the shit out of Tel Aviv and various places in Israel as well. They're targeting these places and they're bombing them. And Iran has several other things they can use to pretty much, if you're in a bunker, they can kill you in a bunker as well. So they have some very, very lethal weapons, which cannot be stopped just like that. And the Iron Dome has not been able to really stop a lot of those weapons, the bombs that are going into Israel. And Iran is relentlessly bombing them. They just constantly bomb them. And they are going to continue to bomb them. The thing about it is the Israelis, they can't flee Israel right now because Netanyahu has closed down the airports, and there's no way for them to fly out of the country right now, or leave the country, because you can leave via roads as well into Egypt and into surrounding places. Of course, some people are trying to get themselves smuggled out of Israel as we speak. But yes, there's been a lot of deaths. All right. So the colonel's right. Now, there's so much to say about this, but the American Exile, shout out to him. He said, I hope he does a podcast, and I really, truly believe he should do that. In suppressed news, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he says the foolish and malicious attack by the Zionist regime on our country occurred while our government officials were indirectly negotiating with the American side, which is very true. During these talks, there was nothing from Iran indicating any military action or harsh move was being planned. From the beginning, it was suspected that the U.S. was involved in this malicious move by the Zionist regime, but with their recent statements, this suspicion grows stronger by the day. The Iranian nation does not surrender to any form of coercion. Just as it firmly stood against an imposed war, it also firmly resists an imposed peace. Those with intellect, speech, and the pen, especially those connected to global public opinion, must explain these realities and not allow the enemy to distort the truth through propaganda. Not only that, but also Iran can pretty much destroy Israel completely, like eradicating. Iran is preparing for war with America. It's not even preparing for war with Israel. And America is literally pushing for that war, and they have their troops and stuff in that place. And we must remember, this was an unprovoked attack by Israel on Iran. No matter what propaganda they tried to drum up, that they possibly have nuclear weapons or the ballistic missiles systems need to be degraded or whatever. Iran, as a sovereign nation, can do whatever the hell it wants. Once it's not, it signed the nuclear weapons proliferation treaties, which was disbanded by Donald Trump. But nonetheless, Iran is not a nation that has nuclear weapons, as far as they say, and two, that they are willing to use those nuclear weapons in any other country. They haven't done that. But now that you've given them an excuse to bomb the shit out of your ass with their ballistic missiles, well, fine. They will bomb the shit out of your ass. They will punish you. And they're about to punish Israel like never before. Israel is no match for Iran. None. Even with their nukes, they're no match for Iran. Iran is a very big country, lots of territory all over it. And, to go up against the Persians, you have to understand Persians have been in war. They've recently been in a war with Saddam Hussein, an 8-year war. Okay. So Iran's a country that knows what war is like. They've been battle tested. Israel has not been battle tested. No one's attacked Israel on Israel unless it's Hezbollah, even Hamas. They have attacked Israel, and Hezbollah won. Hezbollah made them pull out all their civilians from northern Israel. Okay, and now they're in Syria wreaking havoc because they have the help from the Al Qaeda ISIS leader there, who is a traitor to his own people and who is murdering his own people. He's murdering Syrians because the guy has no allegiance to Syria. He has no allegiance to Syria. Okay, this guy is not even born in Syria. I don't know how he's heading Syria. People don't ask those questions. Now let's keep it moving. So the Ayatollah, they're trying to say how they have they can kill the Ayatollah and blah blah blah. You kill the Ayatollah, another Ayatollah will come up. That's all. Because again, you have to understand the difference between a movement and someone who's a dictatorship or people with a leader. Iran has a constitution. They have a Congress. They're very elaborately built. And yes, most people in most countries do not like their governments by and large. You look at UK. The UK people don't like their UK government. America, the American people don't like their American government. So it's not a surprise that the Iranian people are not satisfied with the Iranian government. Never mind all the things that they have done for them, right? So it's not a surprise. The problem is, what is the alternative? I will show you something. Jason Hinkle, do you agree? Fuck Israel. Yes, I agree. Fuck Israel. Okay, as I said before, Israel has been destabilizing nations around it. They are the ones who are attacking other nations to expand their territory and claiming that this territory is ours and this territory is ours. They are the one creating the lack of peace in the region and destabilizing the region. All right. So this is a given fact. And they have been doing it since they've been named the State of Israel in 1948. Okay. Not only that, but even before that, they were terrorizing people in Palestine and terrorizing the English. So the now everybody sees how ugly Israel is. We know Israel has to fall. It has to fall. And whether they want, all the West is supporting Israel, obviously, um, because that's part of the Western Empire, and they symbolize and represent what the Western Empire is. That's why these leaders in America, Europe, they all support them. Even. Okay, we'll get to that. So let's keep it moving. Hold on a second. I will get to it. Let me just cover this before I get to it. Khamenei says Iran's supreme leader's speech on TV. Any U.S. strike will have serious, irreparable consequences. The Zionist entity committed a grave mistake and will be punished for its actions. The Iranian nation firmly resists imposed war. It will also firmly resist imposed peace. This nation will never surrender to pressure. Only the intelligent know that the language of threats cannot be used with the Iranian people. Those familiar with Iran's history and people know better than to speak language of threats. Our people will not submit to any dictates from any party whatsoever. The Americans must understand any military intervention will undoubtedly bring irreversible harm. They should know that Iran will not surrender, and any U.S. strike will have serious, irreparable consequences. War is met with war, bombing with bombing, and strike with strike. I want to see if I can find it here. Okay, they say that Israel reportedly begins striking Iran's supreme leader's Khamenei's underground headquarters. So they're trying to strike his headquarters. They're trying to, of course, assassinate him. Good luck with that. Okay, I just want you to hear this before I go.
Uh, Operation. We've pulled off a number of surprises. When the dust settles, you're going to see some surprises on Thursday night and Friday that will make the beeper operation